quarter century plus. But Israel has wanted to topple the Iranian government. And the U.S. has followed Netanyahu's lead. Netanyahu, basically since the mid-1990s, when he first became prime minister, has had its sights on a U.S.-Iran war that would overthrow the Iranian government. And he has persisted in this now. It's 29 years of persisting in this. And he was delighted to pull the U.S. Into an attack on Iran just some weeks ago, the so-called 12-day war that could be a prelude to another Israeli attack on Iran. What we heard from President Pezeshkian, and I've heard it from Iranian officials for many, many years, is they want peace and normalization. They find it extraordinary that it has been practically impossible. Let me put it more clearly. It has been impossible in practice, is what I really mean to say. It has been impossible to negotiate with the United States. And they negotiated the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the JCPOA, which would have definitively ended any question of Iran moving to a nuclear weapon in return for a lifting of U.S. sanctions. But when it was signed and when it was blessed by the United Nations, when Donald Trump came into office in his first term, essentially the first thing that he did was rip up a negotiated agreement. And that set the course for what has happened since then. Then Israel has repeatedly attacked Iran because it's trying to provoke a response that then leads to a U.S. war against Iran. And there have been repeated episodes. And now, when Trump came in this year, the claim was that he will return to negotiations. And over the nuclear issue that Trump pulled the rug out from under back in 2017 when he ripped up the JCPOA. Well, those negotiations started. We heard reports from both sides over several rounds that the negotiations were making progress. And then one fine day, we were told that the sixth round of negotiation would take place the following Sunday, and the United States bombed Iran that Friday. Well, what kind of negotiation is this? Right. This is really the issue. The United States is utterly unable, it seems, to follow through on diplomatic approaches to issues without resort to cheating, to trickery, and to violence, without ripping up accords, following through on real diplomacy. I'm hoping that this can change, but we are enmeshed in wars in Ukraine, in the Middle East, elsewhere in the world, because we don't have diplomacy. We rip up agreements or view them as tactical devices to lure the other side into some somnolence or belief that they're making headway. Now, this is what we heard from President Pezeshkian, because he said that Iran wants peace, it wants a negotiated outcome, but I think they were all, the leadership there was saying, but what can we do? We negotiate, and then it turns into an attack on us. It turns into Israeli assassinations. And that was the conundrum that they face.
Here's President Pezeshkian yesterday. You might have been there for this. It was shortly after our lunch meeting with him. It's a brief clip of him, and it is pretty much what he told us at the private luncheon. Here he is at the General Assembly yesterday.
I hereby declare once more before this assembly that Iran has never sought and will never seek to build a nuclear bomb. We do not seek nuclear weapons. This is our belief based on the edict issued by the supreme leader and by religious authorities. Therefore, we never sought weapons of mass destruction, nor will we ever seek them. Whereas those who disturb the peace and stability in the region lies in Israel, but Iran is the one that is being punished for those actions. There is a poem that roughly says something to the effect that someone in one side of the world does something to disturb the peace and someone else is punished for those actions.
Your colleague and our colleague, John Mearsheimer, is of the view that the allegation that Iran wants to make nuclear weapons and that's a threat to Israel is a facade, that in reality, Netanyahu wants to turn Iran into another Syria.
Well, this is literally what Netanyahu has said for nearly 30 years. This is a doctrine that goes back to 1996, devised with American neoconservative, close advisors of Netanyahu, a doctrine called clean break. And the idea of clean break is there should never be a Palestinian state. Because we will never have a Palestinian state, there will be a militant opposition to Israel. That will be supported by countries in our region, and we should therefore be prepared to topple those governments that support a pro-Palestinian militancy. It is a very twisted line, but the idea starts with what we have discussed so often. Netanyahu and his colleagues are opposed to a Palestinian state. Everything else follows from that. The ongoing wars follow from that. Israel's trying to assert military, political control, not only over the 8 million Palestinians, but parts of other countries in the region, and to do so with impunity because Israel believes the United States will follow along. And that's why Netanyahu was the great cheerleader for the Iraq War. That was a war that Netanyahu did a tremendous amount to spur. It was a war on false pretenses, not mistaken pretenses, false pretenses, to overthrow a regime that Netanyahu didn't like. The U.S. war on Syria, which began in 2011 under Obama, was promoted by Netanyahu. Netanyahu has promoted the war against Iran. Netanyahu has promoted wars all over his region for almost 30 years because as long as there is no state of Palestine, there will be no peace. But Netanyahu's proposition is we will crush forever a state of Palestine. And just yesterday or the day before, I've lost track because of a long airplane flight, Netanyahu said there will never be a state of Palestine west of the Jordan River. Now, the rest of the world begs to differ. International law, the International Court of Justice begs to differ. We had 10 countries recognize Palestine, bringing the list to well over 150 countries, with the vast majority of the world population saying, of course, there needs to be a state of Palestine living side by side with the state of Israel in peace on the borders of the 4th of June, 1967, and with its capital in East Jerusalem. This is international law. This is straightforward. Netanyahu wants the United States to fight endless wars. Netanyahu is committing genocide in order for that not to happen. And the United States is complicit in that genocide. And the Iranians are caught up in this because the Iranians have supported the Palestinian cause. And from Netanyahu's point of view, that means that Israel needs the United States to go to war with Iran instead of the real, obvious, legal, right solution, which is a state of Palestine that puts all of this bloodshed to an end. That's the straightforward point. Now, Trump's still not there, unbelievably. The whole world is, other than Israel, is saying one thing: end the wars, end the violence, end the starvation, end the atrocities, release the hostages, demilitarize, end Hamas. Everyone's saying that, with a state of Palestine alongside the state of Israel. Trump won't say it, it seems. That's the Zionist lobby in the United States, perhaps, or Trump's utter confusion, because he's confused on almost everything. But he just can't find himself to say it. And Trump could actually make peace, because if he said it properly, there's no alternative for Israel. It would then happen. And the real outcome of this week is that the world said absolutely clearly no to genocide, yes to the two-state solution.
Switching gears before we go, here's a very difficult to watch clip because of the fawning nature of this once formidable and prominent American official. You'll know who these two people are in a minute. This was not in front of the General Assembly, but this too happened at the United Nations yesterday. Chris, number 24.
As you know, Mr. President, I spent over 37 years in the U.S. Army, and I was a soldier, not a diplomat. So I hope you'll forgive me if I speak with the directness of the old soldier that I am as I get the first question out of the way. Because the fact is that we were on different sides when I was commanding the surge in Iraq. You were, of course, detained by U.S. forces for some 5 years, including, again, when I was the 4-star there. And here you are now as the president of Syria. I just want you to tell you, really on behalf of all the people who are here, that this conversation has truly filled me with enormous hope. It has been very, very heartening and illuminating. Your vision is powerful and clear. Your demeanor itself is very impressive as well. How are you holding up under all this pressure? Are you getting enough sleep at night? Again, I've been there, and it is so very, very hard. And your many fans, and I am one of them, we do have worries.
Questioner, of course, is General Petraeus. The person next to him, of course, is somebody who has cut people's heads and hands off in front of their relatives.
Petraeus doesn't get very many things right. I'm sad to say. He told us how wonderful the Ukrainian counteroffensive would be in 2023. A complete, terrible debacle in which so many Ukrainians lost their lives. So I'm not very impressed as a general matter, or I should, okay, double entendre, but I'm not impressed by General Petraeus as a matter of our recent history, but also this approach, again, just makes a nonsense of what has happened. What happened in Syria is that in 2011, Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton decided, to a significant extent pushed by Netanyahu, to overthrow a government. That's it. This is called U.S. regime change operations. It's not complicated. And it resulted in 14 years of disaster and ultimately in this new government, whatever it is, which already is seeing a lot of bloodshed and division inside Syria. But the narrative that Petraeus told is absurd. The United States should stop overthrowing governments. This is the bottom line. It should never have overthrown the government in Ukraine in 2014. It should never have launched what was a 14-year devastating war to overthrow the government of Bashar al-Assad, the Syrian leader. It should never have invaded Iraq in 2003 to overthrow Saddam Hussein. It should never have bombed Libya to overthrow Muammar Gaddafi. The United States has been engaged in dozens of blatantly disastrous, blatantly illegal regime change operations, thinking that it can overthrow governments right and left and that something good will come of it. In the Middle East, these have, to a significant extent, been at the behest of Netanyahu, who wants us to continue this with Iran, except Iran's a big, powerful country with a 5,000-year civilizational history, we should recall. And so Netanyahu is utterly delusional, period. But the U.S. foreign policy is a policy of overthrows rather than negotiations. And that's, you have a general who has been part of all of this, who has spouted such nonsense over the years. And that's why we see the kind of fawning demonstration that you just showed us.
Professor Sachs, thank you very much. Thanks for letting me go across.
But thank